All right, guys, welcome in to a special edition of Coffee and Chel. In fact, I don't even know what we're going to call this after today, but we're going to try something new as I'm joined by not my normal co-host, Kesso. He is with his wife at the hospital. They just had their baby girl, so congratulations to my man, Kesso. But hockey rolls on, Chel rolls on, but today we're not going to talk a lot about show. We're going to talk about the real thing. We're going to talk about hockey, and I brought the most knowledgeable person I know in that sense, my man Padre. Welcome aboard, dude. You fired up? Make your
Oh,
debut,
I'm fired up. Yeah, we got a little bedhead over here with no sleeves. Look at that hair right now.
bro. I was gonna put a hat on. I'm like, nah, dude, this is
I
feathered.
love it. Just let it go. You gotta let it go.
All right, so for anyone that doesn't know who Padre is, he was actually the St. Louis Blues emergency backup goalie for what, like 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, since 2017, and then I've been skating with the guys since the last lockout, the one that actually took out half the season. So
So
since like 2012 or 11, yeah.
we're gonna do a lot of name dropping on the pod, as my man
Yeah.
my man Padre is definitely well versed with a lot of the players in the NHL. So a St. Louis Blues fan, obviously. But today we are going to do our first of four division previews for the upcoming NHL season. We're going to talk about real life hockey on this podcast. And don't worry, Coffee and Chel is still going to be there when we talk about the new stuff with the video game because, well, there's a lot to talk about. We're going to wait for that. We'll bring Kesso in on that one as well. So, all right. First up, we're going to do, again, a breakdown of everyone in the Pacific Division. We're going to do my division, my Sharks. All right. We're going to do the Pacific Division. We're going to go through what we think of the offseason moves and the projections for each of the team and how we think the playoffs for the Pacific Division will shake out. So let's start with the Anaheim Ducks, Padre. Walk me through their additions and subtractions and what you think on the Ducks for the season.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest addition, obviously, we got to go Klingberg. And John Klingberg, no one, I don't think anybody expected him to get a 1 year deal. A lot of people were thinking he was going to get upwards to a 7 year deal. Obviously, during the season, you saw a lot of stuff with him with trade rumors with Dallas, and nothing ever came to fruition. And he stayed there, and I think that's a really solid addition. I think obviously he's going to try and get the bag this season and just run their power play and whatnot. And it's a little bit of a different power play setup this year because they used to have Getzlav up top, kind of quarterback in the thing, which is a little odd having a centerman up there. But he was such a good passer. I mean, you've seen him for all those years in the
Yep.
Pacific Division. I mean, the guy would have like 10 goals and 90 assists. I mean, the guy was a stud. But having losing Getzlav and being able to slide in Ryan Strome, and they also slide in Frank Vetrano. I thought that was a solid addition. I mean, Vetrano was, I don't know about you, but in the playoffs, he was like one of those players. I was like, man, I kind of like to have him on my team.
Yeah, classic playoff guy that's like just like super good to have during the playoffs. The thing about Klingberg that's so stunning, definitely obviously is betting on himself the 1 year deal. But I think what's more stunning is that why Anaheim went after him so hard for that, or maybe they didn't really go after him hard. Just maybe he wasn't getting the offers that he thought he would get, and Anaheim just offered maybe the best scenario for him. But I think this is definitely like a scenario thing for Klingberg. He's definitely going to get all of the opportunity to put as many points up that he can before, like you said, he goes and tries to secure the bag this offseason. What are the odds is on Anaheim at the end of the season?
See, and I listen to our boys. We'll be referencing them a lot, but it's Jeff. Me and Sleazy love Jeff Merrick, and we
Love
love
Jeff
Elliot
Merrick.
Friedman, and we'd like to get him on here eventually. I think it's a real
Imagine.
possibility. It's got to be the right time, I would say, for it. But we'll get him on eventually. I think they'll come on here. And the thing is, they both kind of said the same thing about him signing there, and I agree with this. Like, I mean, if they stink or if they're just average, they'll just ship him out at the deadline. They'll get a first round pick
Yep.
and thanks for coming and hope you enjoyed California. But like I think there is like a little bit of a sneaky possibility with Shattenkirk coming off the books this year.
Yeah.
And he's kind of similar to Shattenkirk. He's obviously younger, he's a better skater, but I'm saying like the type of defenseman he is, like offensive defenseman. I could see them signing him long term, especially like losing Manson. There was some rumors that like Manson might go back there this summer, and he ended up just staying in Colorado, which I was kind of surprised by, to be honest with you. But I guess when they lost Kadri, they had the money to do that. So I don't know. I think you're going to see like just a fusion of like youth again with that team. I think they're hoping that Comtois comes back, and does something because he didn't do anything last year really. And obviously, our boy, NHL cover boy, Trevor Zegras, I think he had a great year last year. And I think Mason McTavish, obviously, all you Canadians up
Yeah.
there, you guys know exactly what you're getting with him. And I think he's gonna be a thorn in the side of the Sharks the next 10 years. Like,
It's
I think that's the type of player that you're like, man, I wish we had a guy like him. You know what I mean? Like, he's just a beast.
we're gonna talk about how sad I am about the state of the Pacific Division because the Ducks and Kings are just going to dominate the Sharks for the next decade. But man, I'm not gonna lie, so early and super not fair to make
Super
this
early.
comparison, but Zegras and McTavish remind me of like the North American Zetterberg Datsuk. Just like the trajectory so far. Like that's what it reminds me of. Because I don't know if Zegras will ever be like a 100-point player, right?
Mm,
But clearly, every time he has the puck, he's just like, "I'll create time and space myself." Like
right.
he has no, like no leash with that. Like he just wants to just put on a show all the time. A lot of like what Datsuk did, just create space himself. And yeah, McTavish it looks really. I remember when McTavish got drafted and it was like a reach. Like it was like seen as a little bit of a reach there, but man, that's why the scouts are the scouts because yeah, he looks absolutely incredible. Other guys up front. So the Strome signing was also a really good. The 5 mil. Obviously those are the guys that like what happens on the Leafs. You know, like there's just all the other guys get signed, and then there's like those middle guys that are super
Right.
important. Man, that guy could not hit the net to save his life though in the playoffs, and just kind of like all the chances in the world,
Yeah.
but could not bury in the playoffs. But yeah, I think Anaheim's forward core they're very exciting. They also have the number 4 ranked prospect pool, just via Corey Pronman on the Athletic. So really high there. Obviously, head by Zegras and McTavish. But man, I watched Drysdale play against my Ice Dogs in his draft year before the pandemic. And when you watch like juniors, the I think honestly the thing that you can notice the most about an NHL prospect is when you have a defenseman in the OHL or juniors as a whole, they want the puck. A lot of defensemen will look to just immediately get rid of it, and every time Drysdale played the Ice Dogs, it was disgusting. It was just end to end. He's extremely fun, and I think with Klingberg there too, I don't think he has to play like those top line minutes and be that guy, that right-handed guy that has to play 25 minutes a night. So young, I think they can be a little more careful with him, but they are set up to be extremely good. They also had a pretty good draft. This year they got Nathan Gaucher later in the draft in Montreal. I was there. Nathan Gaucher was a huge fan favorite. I believe he played in the queue. But that was a really, really good pick. I think that Mintnyakov seems to be a bit of a reach early on. But we'll wait and see. Obviously, can't really fault them after that pick of McTavish. So, yeah, Anaheim looks great. Give me your thoughts. So they finished 7th in the Pacific Division, 23rd overall last season in the league, right behind my Sharks. Where do you see them finishing this year, and what's your projection there?
I think, I think they'll just miss the playoffs probably again, if I had to guess, just because I feel like losing like some veterans,
No
you're gonna
Getzlav.
lose Getzlav and stuff and Manson off your team. I know Manson like was gone at the deadline, but if you remember, for the beginning of last year, they were
Yeah,
like really good. Like
yeah.
it looked like they could possibly like, oh, maybe this is the year the Ducks like kind of get it going again.
Mhm.
And they obviously ended up being like I think they kind of pulled it off like before anybody else did, but they were like, we're gonna pull the shoot on it and we're gonna trade everybody. But I don't know. I mean, what's see if Troy Terry can do anything close to
Yeah.
that again? I'm not saying that he can't. I'm just saying there's a difference when you have a playmaker like Getzey passing you the puck like that, and then Max Jones, fellow NHL EA Sports player. He likes his shell. I've played a few times with him and Robert Thomas, and they don't really play the game. They just kind of run around and hit. But he's coming back off of a year-long injury, and Max Jones is a beast. Like I could see him being one of those guys like down the road if they get in the playoffs eventually, like next year or the year after, whatever. And he's one of those guys, a big body that'll just be super effective in the playoffs. Like it's always those big body guys that you know what I mean that just tear it up. It seems like in the playoffs, but I think he's a dark horse for that kind of thing.
No, absolutely. I think that I think Anaheim is probably a year or two away still.
Right.
We'll see if Gibson stays on the team. It's going to be very telling at the deadline this year. If they just go full rebuild, or if they think that the guys that they've gotten like McTavish and Zegers can propel it quick enough, to kind of go for a little run while Gibson is still there. But yeah, I still think it's far too early. The Pacific Division is still pretty wide open. I think it's not as bad as it was last year. Last year, it was by far the worst division, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, by a
Yeah,
mile. I agree.
exactly. Like we'll talk about LA in a little bit, but LA was not a particularly great team, and they were able to win. They were able to get, and then you have Vegas, who Vegas will be a playoff team this year. Like that would be monumental if they weren't. And then we've got the
It'd be
Sharks.
more embarrassing if they weren't this year. Like people
Yeah.
freaked out last year about it, and I'm like, dude, if you look at the man games lost, like
Yep.
it's like, what are you gonna do? And one thing I will say, like kind of what you were saying about Anaheim too, is I know John Gibson, like he's a stud, like
Yep.
he's really good, but the last 3 years he hasn't surpassed the 905 save percentage. And I don't think people. I understand the team's not. It's a team sport, right? It's a team defense, everything like that. I get the whole thing. But in years past, even on like worse teams, he's put up 9, 15 plus save percentages. So it's like I've heard a lot of people say the same thing, kind of like
Maybe he's just
people are
overrated
down on
now.
him. They're like down on him a little bit.
Yeah.
So
No, absolutely. But yeah, I'm gonna say Anaheim misses this year. In all honesty, I think that they finish seventh in the Pacific again. I hope they do because the team that they might not might be one of might be mine. But yeah, I think that they'll probably finish around 6 or 7 in the Pacific Division, and the next like 2 years I think is where they can really make their mark. All right, so
right.
that was the Ducks. Let's talk about Seattle. Let's do Seattle. Obviously, last year, I would say it's really hard because expansion is going to be compared with Vegas. What we saw with Vegas was 20 or 30 other general managers that did not know and have an idea of how the expansion would go, and they were looking to trade, just get rid of Pitt. Like Vegas's was the perfect storm. And I think the Kraken had expectations. People were like, oh, man, maybe it'll be a playoff team. It's like the Kraken were, in my opinion, what I thought Vegas should have been, but other general managers kind of allowed them to not be. So let's talk about the Kraken a little bit. Their first year, and it went kind of what I expected to be, extremely poorly. They have no top-end talent. Really, a lot of players that would make the second line on some teams, but not all teams. And then a lot of just middle guys on defense as well. Grubauer and net, and really no prospect pool to speak of other than Matty Beniers, who did look like he actually belonged in the NHL when he got his cup of coffee at the end. So talk to me a little bit about the Kraken and what you expect there from them.
Yeah, and kind of going back to like the draft, it's like weird because I think any of us, we were like, okay, why are they not? And I'm not saying this because I'm a Blues fan, but it's like, why are you not taking Tarasenko?
Yep.
Why are you, like, why are you like missing out on in like whether their contracts are crappy or not? But like Matt Duchene or Ryan Johansson, you're gonna tell me right now if they didn't have one of those guys, like they wouldn't look a little better, especially down the middle before they got Shane Wright, before they got Matty Beniers and stuff like that, like in the fold, it's like. They didn't really have a center. Their first line center last year was Jared McCann, and everybody was like, I mean, and anybody that plays the NHL video game was following him all year.
The best fantasy card, dude.
Yeah, the best fantasy card. So it's like, and I know Kessa loves him because he's a former Penguin, but it's like he kind of got like that, oh, you see the next William Karlsson or like whatever. So they didn't have like, I guess you want to say like a lot of it's luck too. I mean, Vegas was very guys that came out of nowhere. Alex Tuck. I'll be honest, like I knew of him as like a first round. I didn't think he was gonna be like a gazelle out on the ice. Like all of a sudden when he's out there, like that guy's a beast. Like they just had like and I think obviously rallying around like the tragedy and stuff like that in Vegas. I think that was a big thing from what I hear from a lot of guys. And I don't know. I don't know if there was as much like piss and vinegar, I guess, as you want to describe, like with Vegas as there was with Seattle. Because the guys going to Seattle, like, I don't think they were like that mad about going there. And it's weird too, because they just built their team a lot different. Like they signed Schwartz, they signed guys like that really, I don't remember like Adam Larson, like those kind of deals. Like I don't remember like Vegas signing guys really like to like multi-year deals. Like Grubauer, that was out of nowhere. I thought for sure they were going to be going with like Drieger and I can't remember who the other goalie they signed at the time was. It might have been
Decord.
Was it Decord? I don't know. It might have been just him and Decord. Yeah, it was him and Decord. Yeah, and I was like, they're gonna go with them or something. But then they ended up signing Grubauer, which I always said, and like obviously he's a way better goalie than me. But Grubauer, I never thought in a million years was like as good as what he showed in
It's
Colorado. You know what I mean?
it's it's tough when you have a goaltender that like on an amazing team. It's there's goaltenders obviously that they're all very very good, right? But like the
Right.
Chris Osgoods, like you
Yeah.
know what I mean. Like it's tough when you get those big contracts for those guys, because yeah, he did not have a good year with
Antti
Seattle.
Niemi, your boy.
Yeah, Anthony Niemi's a perfect example. Although he did save the Sharks from rocking
He
Niittymaki
let's
in that
just say
year.
they're like above average. And you know what?
Yeah.
I will say this: when Niemi won the cup, I mean, you still have to make the big saves. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think Kemper kind of proved like Kemper's another one I'd be kind of scared of.
Yep.
But I mean, we'll get onto that like later on when we talk about the next, the Caps and stuff like that, like in a few weeks. But I don't know. Basically, with the Kraken, they just got a lot of the same. I feel like they brought in Burakovsky, they brought in Bjorkstrand. Now
That
those guys will
Bjorkstrand
score.
deal was
Yes.
yeah. See, that was
Yeah.
what Vegas did during their expansion draft, where they were like, "Oh, there's
Right.
a trade that just happened. This team is absolutely scuffed. They have no
Right.
idea where to go." And they just absolutely fleeced Bjorkstrand.
They they just have a lot of like second and third
Yep.
line talent, I feel like.
Yep.
But we'll see because if Shane Wright's as good as, because you have those pissed off Montreal fans, and if he's as good as what they were all crying about, acting like they all know, he's the greatest player ever, like no one knows. Like that's the thing about the draft. Like we saw that, like if there's a reason why, like what was it, 3 or 4 teams like they didn't take him. I mean, who knows? I mean, not saying he's not going to be, amazing, but we'll see if he was the true first overall pick. But Matty Beniers, like watching that kid play, at Michigan, and then watching him play, like even in like the Olympics, he was like another kid, like Slavkovsky kind of, where I was like, dude, I know these aren't all NHLers at the Olympics, but those guys were dominating
Yep.
at the Olympics
Yep.
against other grown men that have played pro hockey. So
Yep.
I think the Kraken once again will miss the playoffs, unless like some like miracle kind of happens with like everything just falls in together and some guy scores 50 million goals like Carlson did that one year, and then their
Mhm.
goalies play amazing. I mean, I just don't see it though. Again, like we need to. I guess it all kind of hinges on Beniers and Wright, honestly.
Yeah, I think this year is the first year you're gonna have a lot of excitement because they actually have a prospect pool. But yeah, I
Yeah.
would I would definitely expect them to finish last in the Pacific Division again, and I, this is gonna be a theme, I'm sure. But it is clear that some teams saw Connor Bedard and they're like, we are gonna do our due diligence to try and land Connor Bedard, and I wonder if at the expansion draft that was like, we're not going to try and emulate Vegas at all. We are going to try and be bad and build through the draft. And I'm not going to like getting Beniers. I think that draft is going to be viewed as a little bit weaker, or I think the Owen Power draft will have the most amount of insane gems that are found outside of the first round because the OHL did not play, and
Yeah.
that is the biggest feeder league in pro hockey, and it had the record amount of Americans because they played during COVID.
Right.
So a lot of Americans got drafted. Not that they weren't, they shouldn't have been, but there is a lot of. I bet you any money there's going to be a lot of second to like sixth round OHL kids that just come out of nowhere. But they got Beniers, and I think that was really good. But Shane Wright, I hope, like, man, he just looks so slighted, and I got to meet him
Yeah.
at the GWC. Awesome guy, and he looks like he has a chip on his shoulder because he didn't go first. And at first, before the draft process, I thought that was a bad thing. That like he like wants the ego of going first, but when he didn't,
Right.
and he just looked mad about it, like that, I love that because like
Yeah.
I think that he is gonna do everything he can, and we'll see. And he wanted to play first line minutes, but he'll get his opportunity with Seattle, and I think it'll be a lot more exciting once Beniers got there. I think the excitement wore off from not from Seattle fans because they obviously they're loving it right now, but outside of it, it was like, okay, it's cool. It's clearly not Vegas. We'll see them in 5 years like we did with
Dude,
Cleveland.
I was just gonna say that.
Yep.
When I would watch them, because I sit up like a loser and I'll
Yep.
stay up till like midnight, even when I have to work at 5 a.m. But it's like I'll like watch them, and it's just not the same as
Yeah.
when I watched Vegas. They're like the Vegas, and I know I'm not like a Vegas fan, but I'd watch the games in the beginning of the first year, and I was almost like rooting for them because
Mm-hmm.
the place was just buzzing at puck
Yep.
drop, and once they dropped the puck, dude, they always would score in the first like 5 minutes. Vegas would.
Dude,
It was
don't
nuts.
remind me, dude. Don't remind me, dude.
And Seattle, when I would watch it, it was just kind of like, I mean, yeah, whatever. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't as excited. I don't know why. And Yeah, I agree. Like once Beniers got there, they're definitely like more exciting. And
There's
I'm
something to
I'm also
focus on.
curious to see how your boy Marty Jones does there. He's because he had to come in because Drieger got hurt.
Perfect signing, because if you want a team to do worse for Connor Bedard, signing Martin Jones is the number one thing that you can do.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we're through Anaheim and Seattle. Those would be our 7 and 8 teams of the Pacific Division. Let's talk about my San Jose Sharks, okay? It has been a rough 3 years as a Sharks fan. I've been a Sharks fan for the last 20 years, 20 or so years, and I was blessed with 15 straight, 17 of 8 years, 16 of 17 years where they were in the playoffs. Well, they didn't win a cup. Basically, the regular season was just boring to me because it was just like whatever. It's a lot like what Toronto fans are going through right now. And now, much different feel. This is I have no hope. The ownership has basically said we can't afford to do a complete teardown rebuild because, while they sold out for 10 straight years, they don't have the fan base to sell out and keep the team afloat, or what the owner wants to, through a teardown rebuild. So that means that they just have to ride out the remnants of the Marlowe and Thornton era, and that's awfully ugly, So last year was not good. I think that they are in the exact same situation they are now. Mike Grier comes in, completely new management. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't really stated what's wrong with Doug Wilson. But I know a lot of people will harp on Doug Wilson for giving out the Carlson contract and the Varkamper Vlasic contract. That's just what happens when uh, continually contend for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Eventually, it'll catch up to you, just like it's doing in Chicago now.
Chicago. Yeah.
There was no one I would trust more to do a rebuild than Doug Wilson, just for the sheer fact that he can't tear it down, and he is probably the biggest shoot your shot GM that we've ever had.
Oh yeah.
We listen to Hockey Central quite a bit. We love Merrick and Friedman, and when Berkey was on there, he would talk about it all the time that Doug Wilson was one of the first general managers to call about your star player, and he pulled off some of the biggest trades in the last 20 years.
Oh yeah.
And having someone like that, I think, is the perfect kind of guy to try and get through this, because you need someone that'll get extremely creative. Mike Grier, the problem I have with a new general manager is that I don't know how you would come up with an amazing strategy to figure out what to do with this team. So they added like 15 new guys. His first week as a general manager, he signed an entire new bottom six, and the issue with that is that for years that's what Doug Wilson would do, but the problem was their top six was stacked. Now they're in a slightly better position than Anaheim in terms of forwards, just because Timo Meier looks like a legitimate first-line player. And Tomas Hertl is probably on the bottom end of a first-line player. But after that, they really don't have anyone that can be at the top of the lineup. Logan Couture, well, I think he's an amazing two-way center, is 30. Wow, I cannot believe he's 33 years old now. He is no longer going to push for a point per game or 80 points in a season. So he is a second line center, which is fine. But then after that, it's just completely devoid of NHL talent in terms of like their top six. So they signed Oscar Lindblom. Great story. Awesome to have him. I don't know how he's going to respond. Prior to his cancer diagnosis, he looked like he was going to be one of the better young players in the NHL with Philly. They signed Luke Kunin, who is a okay bottom six.
My boy.
Yeah,
that's my boy.
Bottom
he's
six
from St.
guy.
Louis. I skate with him in the summertime. Yeah, he's dude. I think you're gonna really like him. I hope he sticks around long enough to where like you can see him in the playoffs, because I think he'll thrive in the playoffs.
Yeah,
he's got an absolute piss missile of a shot. He'll fight. He'll grind. He's just like one of those like I just think like with him and Lindblom, like last year especially, they were in roles where they couldn't flourish. I feel like, and whenever Lindblom came back to Philly, they kind of like replaced his spot while he was gone, and I think he's just in a better spot. It's kind of like Barabanov, like you saw like what he did.
I love Barabanov. Yeah, I think that the Leafs made a mistake with him. I know that Leafs fans will be like, well, he wasn't going to play in the top six, which is this is a perfect example of what happened with Vegas. Barabanov is a perfect example. So there's probably 100 NHLers that if they got first line minutes would put up
Right.
50 to 60 to 80 points in a season, and that's what happened with Vegas. We'll talk about them in full later on. Barabanov was never going to make the top 6 with the Leafs. But once he was with the Sharks, he was just electric with the puck. Like one of the most creative guys when he had the puck. And I'm super glad that they signed him to a bit of an extension. So he's got another 2 years there. But
And he
again,
looks sick wearing number 94.
it does look good. I do like. I do love that number.
You
But
don't see a lot of 94s anymore.
outside of that, you've got Nick Bonino and Nico Sturm. Yeah, you know, okay. Matt Nieto is a great penalty killer, and then it's a lot of prospects that I don't think are ready. But here's the one thing that does appear to be the case with Greer. So last year I got to see William Eklund, and I'm not going to lie. Again, bias aside, he played his 9 games. He looked like he fit. He did look small, but he was unbelievable with the puck. And he is probably the most exciting prospect that I've had as a Sharks fan. Ever since Tomas Hertl, and even when Hertl came onto the scene, I wasn't excited for him to be in the lineup, but he made it exciting with like his 4-goal game and like that. Right. You know what I mean? It happened. William Eklund, I'm just excited for right off the rip. And there is a rumor that the entire prospect system for the Sharks is going to be in the AHL this year. Now, as a Sharks fan, because I really don't think they'll make the playoffs, I think that they have a better shot than Anaheim and Seattle, but everything would have to break right, and Reimer would have to play phenomenal. Erik Karlsson would have to stay healthy his whole season. We'll talk about Karlsson in a second.
LeBanc, what's his deal? Is
LeBanc, he took that 1-year deal when the Sharks with the Sharks when they had their best team ever, the year that they lost to St. Louis in the conference final. And I've never seen this before, maybe in sports, but he took a 1-year deal, which was stunning at the time. But it looked like they had to, make up for that and sign into like a 5-year deal, which was tough. But I don't know what they're gonna do with him now, with the $5 million deal. But we'll wait and see. I think that he could return to some sort of his former self, but I think that now he's just someone that will not be a top 6 player. But it looks like in the AHL, what they're going to do is all of their prospects. And like I said, this is the most excited I've been about a prospect pool as a whole. So William Eklund, if you're redrafting the Owen Power draft, I honestly think that he goes 3 or 4. We'll see about Edmondson because he looks really good as well. But I think that when he fell, there was talks about him going first that year. Owen Power's clearly number 1 still, but can't wait to see him. But it looks like everyone is going to be in the AHL. So Bordelot, man, I am way too biased, but I have not seen a player come into the league as a fan of the Sharks and be that exciting at the end of last year. And I'm going to say this, that I think that this is my extremely hot, bold take from watching Bordelot over the last little bit of the season and just how he played. And then the World Juniors, obviously disappointing finish, but he was one of the better players on Team USA. I think that he will end up being the second best Wolverine, which is an extremely hot take as Kent Johnson and Matty Beniers are both there by Owen Power, but I don't know why. And I think that if he goes into the NHL and starts and he makes the team, I think that he can push for some Calder votes, but it looks like everyone is going to start in the AHL. And the Barracuda have been awful. They now have the best jerseys in potentially the entire league. If they're going to play their entire prospect pool in the AHL, that'll be the most exciting AHL team that's in the league. Like, you'll have Scott Reedy, you'll have Bordelot, William Eklund, and a lot Brandon Coe, Tristan Robbins, who led the WHL in points. Excited to see all of them. On defense, though, man, it is a mess. Trading Burns, a lot of people were like, man, they give up Burns, didn't get anything. Getting rid of that contract is huge. Getting rid of one of those contracts is massive. I think that a lot of people forgot that he wasn't signed for 2 years. He was signed for 3 more years. And that is just way too much. So him being gone and getting rid of most of the contract because they retained, I believe, 20% of it, 25% of it. But that was big. I think it's a huge plus for Carlson. Now, for anyone that does not watch Sharks games, and that's going to be a lot of you probably, when Carlson plays and he's not hurt, last year specifically, he was phenomenal. Like, I would say he was worth about $8 million, which I will take. I will take that version of Erik Karlsson. The problem is now is that he's just hurt all the time. However, seemed to be an issue where they could not figure out Burns and Karlsson on the power play. And now
From
having
day one,
yeah, and but
literally.
that's just how it's going to be. You have two right hand. I think if one of them was
Yeah.
left-handed, man,
Oh
that would
yeah,
have
they'd
been
be
one of the
fine.
most exciting like defensive pairings ever. But because they're both right-handed, it really had an issue. But Karlsson is gonna. It is now Karlsson's decor, and
Yeah.
that's what happened in Ottawa, and that's where he succeeded. And maybe this will allow him to return a lot more value. The real issue isn't Karlsson, it's Marc-Edouard Vlasic. So Vlasic was one of, if not the best defensive defenseman in the NHL for a solid like 3 to 4 year span. I think when he made Team Canada, everyone went, "What? Like who?" That weren't Sharks fans. But that he kind
That
of
was the greatest defensive hockey team ever too in
Yep.
Sochi.
Yep. Marc-Edouard Vlasic collected the bag, got $7 million, and I think the biggest drop off in hockey is the power forward and defensive defenseman because you offer no offense on defense, and when your skating and defense starts to falter, when you've made the bag basically scoring 15 to 20 points a season, you are not offering anything offensively, and for the last 3 or 4 years, he has been awful defensively, and he has 4 years at $7 million. There were some talks that he would get bought out this year. That cap hit would be Suter and Parise-esque in Minnesota, and because the Sharks have so many big contracts, they can't afford to take that buyout cap hit. However, next year, I would be stunned if he is still a Shark. I think that's when the buyout happens. $7 million for he has basically been an AHL level defenseman in terms of his play. It has been sad to watch. Apparently, after the COVID year, he came in and just was out of shape, and he doesn't want to leave because he likes living there, which is not good. So that one's tough. Mario Ferraro is quickly becoming one of my favorite Sharks of all time. Dude leads the league in block shots from defenseman. The guy might not have he might not have the best hands, but he has an insane motor, and he's going to be the captain of the Sharks eventually. And then it's a bunch of like Lindbloms and Kunins. It's like Radim Šimek. They signed Marcus Nudavara.
I like Nudavara. Yeah, I like him.
I think that
I watched him a lot with Columbus, and I like him. He's like steady. I think you'll like him. I really do.
It depends if he can come back from like injury and play like he
Yeah.
used to, but I think that one is actually not a terrible one. They got Matt Benning for 4 years at 1.2.
I was surprised by that kind of.
I don't know. And then Merkley.
What do you think of Merkley? What do you think of Merkley? I need to hear this because he was a hot topic when he got drafted because of all the stuff in juniors. Of like just being a little cocky kid, you know what I mean? But he ripped it up in juniors. I look at him a lot like Tony D'Angelo, just not with the the racial, and the political, like whatever. I'm talking about like just like coming out of juniors because like same kind of defenseman, right-handed defenseman, offensive. But like what with him last year? Like, what did you think of him last year? I guess
he dude at the blue line. I'm not even gonna lie, like he is very Dan Boyle, Cale Makar at the blue line in the offensive zone. But that's where all similarities end. So, like, at the blue line, he head up, dangles any poke check or any pressure, which has a ton of use. But defensively, doesn't like to go into corners all that often. He's not very big, so if you don't have like that, that dog in you when you're a little bit of a smaller defenseman, you need someone to make up for it. And the left-hand side of the Sharks blue line is now just awful. Like it's Ferraro is locked with Karlsson. But after that, it's like Radim Šimek, who has not played in a while, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who is now a defensive liability, and then Jacob Megna. So like there's no help. I think that I don't know if he'll get his run because Quinn did not have the best reputation with handling younger players in the Rangers. Now I think it's a little overblown because of the position that he was put in with the Rangers. Where he had to make the playoffs.
Their owner's a little involved, if you know what I'm saying.
He had to make the playoffs, and he did not want to. He had to make a playoffs. He didn't care about rookie development. I remember watching. So what I said about Jamie Drysdale, I remember watching Merkley actually, when he was playing the Ice Dogs in the COVID year, remember that Tucker Tynan injury?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I was at that game, and that was against the Knights at the time. And I remember the remake game I went to, and dude was just they were winning like 7-1, scored a goal, jumped into the boards, like I immediately could see why, but it's same situation, just demanded the puck, and really really good with that. I think that the Sharks had Carlson, Burns, and Merkley did not fit because it's another offensive right-handed defenseman. If there was one thing the Sharks had in abundance, it was offensive defenseman on the right side. But now no Burns. I hope he gets one more shot, Merkley. But I think this is it. Like I think we'll see like Josh Ho-Sang situation here, where
Yeah.
like all the talent in the world doesn't seem to want to put it together. But and then in net, the Aiden Hill experiment. He was hurt a lot, did not go as planned.
You
James,
played Chel with them.
it did. I got to play. He is a really nice guy. Loves his war zone too. But no, I got to meet. He's a great guy and he's huge, but he's just hurt. And
Yeah.
James Reimer, the Sharks would have challenged for a top 5 pick this year if it wasn't for James Reimer, which hurts me because I want to see the Sharks do bad. I would, especially this year. If the Sharks land a Connor Bedard, bro, I would lose my mind. But yeah, Reimer is phenomenal, and I think that he'll get traded because they have 3 goal. He signed like 1 million goaltenders. They brought back Aaron Dell. They have Capo Kakinen, who I think will end up being the starter. He'll get a run. But I don't know. In terms of predictions for the Sharks, I know we went a little bit longer with the Sharks, but obviously we'll do the same thing with the Blues when we get to the Blues next week. But
They didn't do much, so we won't go that long.
yeah,
The Blues didn't do
I
much.
guess.
Hey, I'll say this about the Sharks though, real quick. They got the best looking coach in the league. How about that?
They do have a great looking coach and the best alternate jerseys in the NHL.
That is true. I always tell you that.
The teal, not the stealth. Those are god awful, and they never win with them. Those are not it. The teal with the silver old school ones. That is I have a Logan Couture jersey that I always wear on streaming and videos. That one is my favorite jersey. But I think that they finished 6th in the Pacific Division again, ahead of Anaheim and Seattle. My problem is I think that they are too good to finish bottom 5 in the league and too bad to make the playoffs, which is legitimately the worst place to be in professional sports. And ownership is just going to keep them there for a little while, but I think they're going to be worse no matter what they do. So 6th in the division there. Let's move along to Vancouver. Let's be quick on Vancouver because I thought Vancouver would be a lot better than they were. They brought in I love Connor Garland. I know everyone's like, oh my God, the OEL trade is the Connor Garland trade. I love Connor Garland. He was a guy that's a player that you watch play against your team and you notice, but if you don't watch, if you didn't watch Connor Garland when he was with Coyote, you wouldn't know about him. I thought that was a great trade for them, but the OEL deal is already showing why that was such a rough trade there. So talk to me a little bit about what you think about the Canucks and where you see them going.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it just hinges on Petey, Elias Pettersson, and obviously Besser coming back with his dad passing away. Obviously, that was a big deal. And they added Mikheyev, they added Lazar, and they added a St. Louis Blue, Dakota Joshua. I'm actually kind of curious. I know a lot of people don't know who he is, but I'm kind of curious to see how he does there just because he's going to be playing now consistently and whatnot. But Mikheyev, a lot of Leafs fans I know were kind of upset about losing him somewhat because he's just a great skater and whatnot. But one of those things where you pay all those guys up top, you're going to lose those, those 3rd and 4th liners. You know what I mean? You kind of have to just keep a revolving door. I don't know. I think a lot of it, just honestly, it just Pedersen and Besser. And like the JT Miller thing's going to hang over everyone's head this year too, with him being. I mean, that's something where you're going to see. I mean, crap, at this rate, who knows? He could get traded before training camp. You never know. It's one of those things where it's going to be, I think they're going to see how they do, and if they do good, they're going to hold on to him as like their own little rental.
I was about to say that. I think that he's their trade deadline acquisition. He had
well, you saw how good they were when Boudreaux came in too. They were good when Boudreaux came in.
Mm-hmm.
They started scoring. That guy just wins. Bruce Boudreaux is just a winner. He didn't win the cup or anything yet, but like everywhere he goes, they just score and they turned it around. And I don't know. I'm curious. And Demko's a stud. Like he really is.
One of the best goaltenders in the league, I think. I agree. I think that's it's a lot of just their top end guys performing. So like as long as man, remember when Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar were like attached to the hip, and now it's like Dude, not even like, that trajectory went like they were like this, and now one's like that, and the other one's just kind of. But Pedersen fell off there. If I'd love to hear in the comment section just like what Vancouver Canuck fans thought about what happened with Pedersen, but like their top six looks like just looking at their top six in terms of like cap hits and things like that. Pedersen, Besser, Horvat, Miller, Garland, and then one of Mikheyev or Podkolzin is a solid top six. And then OEL, he is not worth his money. He is still a very talented defenseman. Quinn Hughes, Myers, Dermott, like that's not a bad top four either. And you have Demko and Net. Like this is the team I think in the Pacific Division outside of Vegas that super underperformed. But it's not like they missed the playoffs by that much. Like there was a big jump between 6 and 5 between San Jose and Vancouver. Almost 20 points. So I could see Vancouver. I don't see them making it in the top three. We'll talk about the top three in a little bit, and I think that one team is going to fall out that was there last year, but I could see them making a wild card spot. I think.
Yeah, the thing with them is like, I don't know. The weird thing about it is, I think I don't know. It's tough to say. Like I could see like them in like LA like flip flop.
Yeah.
But then again, like Vegas was the one like before we obviously we're gonna go through all the teams, but I think it'll be like Vegas, Edmonton, and Calgary ultimately.
Same.
But like I could see like LA taking a step back this year too. I mean I don't know. I'm not saying like they were. I feel like they had like a great year last year, but it like Jonathan Quick also like that kind of thing. But I don't know, Vancouver, like I said, a lot of it's just Besser and Pedersen getting back to like what they were, I guess.
I agree. I think that's what it hinges on. Because yeah, if they can't, that's awfully tough for them. But yeah, the JT Miller thing is going to be tough. I remember there was like, I think the draft, everyone's just waiting for it. I remember when the trade got announced with like Montreal, like in Chicago, like thought that Miller might have been involved in that. But yeah, if Besser and all of those guys can get back,
and when I say Pedersen too isn't back to like what he was, I understand he put up like most points he ever, but I just mean like he was like being like talked about like is like the next whatever, and he kind of just like if you remember the beginning of last year because he came, I think wasn't last year he came into camp a little bit late with like Quinn Hughes or whatever.
Yeah,
was it the year before?
So I believe,
but it's like it took them a while to get going. I don't know. I just think like kind of like what you said with McCarr and Hughes, like there's a trajectory and they were going like this, and I feel like they kind of just flatlined a little bit, but that's not a big deal. I mean, they're young kids, so.
Number 4 in the Pacific Division last year was the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, obviously, I always liked Vegas because of how fun they were that first year you talked about it. I obviously ended up hating them because the Sharks and Vegas rivalry is no longer really a thing in the sense because the biggest parts of it are now gone. Reeves and Kane are now not on the Sharks and the Knights, but and the other issue is that Vegas has literally gotten rid of every single player that was in that rivalry. So in the span of 5 years, they had a masterclass of an expansion draft. Like I don't think we'll ever see a team of professional sports do that again in our lifetime. And they have now made it where they have tried to be the New York Rangers of the West, where they just go out after any big fish every year, and it seems like they have no loyalty to their players, and that has come out in whether it be the Marc-Andre Fleury thing with the stab in the back. Like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to think of...
Look at what just happened the other day. Paul Stastny, from what I heard, got offered more money by Vegas, and he lives in Vegas. He's Alex Petrangelo's next door neighbor. I have inside info on that. We're going to talk about
Petro too, because you skate with Petro. So
I know I might have to put on my Vegas gloves for this segment. But no, so like Petro told me he lives next door, and they thought they were getting him back. And I texted Petro the other day, and I said, why did he go to Carolina if he lives in Vegas? He skates in Vegas.
Yep.
He likes Vegas to the point. I literally think it. I mean, what else would it be besides? You're pissed off that you got stabbed in the back too. Now, was his as big as a deal as Fleury's? No. But it's still just like kind of what you go to. Nate Schmidt, that kind of thing. I was about to say,
Nate Schmidt was like one, because I remember there was a lot of like athletic reports and fan favorite and about how that was the year when they brought in Petro and they just had to get rid of somebody. And it was just like, man, it's just a tough look. And they've gone after all of the big fish. And again, if you would have said in 5 years that they would run out Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, and Alex Pietrangelo, like, you've got to be high. But
Yeah.
now that it's happened, it's like, man, they don't have the juice the same as what they had. And now
We'll see this year, though. I
let
want to see this year. This is a big year.
yes,
This is the
yes,
year that, like, finally everyone can. If they stink or not stink, but if they don't make it
make
this
the
year, then people
playoffs.
can crap all over them. I get it. My thing with them is like what you just said. If you could bring in Eichel, Stone, Petro,
Yeah,
who wouldn't want to do that?
yeah.
And like people are like, well, they're giving away Patch Ready for free. Well, listen, when those guys have cap spaces that are 8.8
Hmm.
plus million, you have to make room, and no one else is going to take on your other contracts. I mean, like I understand like what people say. Like I get the goofiness of their asset management, but when you're bringing in two at least superstars, I mean, you got to make room. I mean, you have to. And I don't know. I understand like I don't know why people always pro sports fans or fans in general, they always get upset about what everyone else does with their money. What do you care what Bill Foley does with his money?
Yeah,
It's
I
his
guess
money. If
yeah.
he wants to look like an idiot, like and he can do whatever he wants, the guy's like one of the richest owners in the NHL. Like he doesn't care. Like you said, they're the New York Rangers of the West.
I
I don't know.
think
I think it's fun. I think it makes hockey more fun.
I think that after a certain point of making just they could do no wrong in like the first 2 years. Like they just
No, for
legitimately
sure.
could do no wrong. However, their trades they've lost other than the Mark Stone trade, they have lost and
Yeah.
we'll see about Eichel. I think both of those you would make. But man, the one to lose Suzuki to
Yeah.
Montreal, that looks like it might be one of the worst of the last like 3 or 4 years or 5 years
Yeah.
in the NHL. Because if you imagine that they just would have stood pat and had Nick Suzuki, like that would have
Yeah.
been just that would have been phenomenal for them. Because I think center depth. I mean, Chandler Stevenson was absolutely incredible, but I don't think anyone.
He's awesome.
Yeah, I don't think anyone
I love
projected
him.
him to do what he did. He just kind of was like, all right, we need something here. We don't have Eichel, like you know what I mean?
Such a
Like
good skater.
yeah, like I think that losing Leonard. Like what do you think about that? Like
Yeah, that's the deal where like Suzuki, like it hurts, but like
Reimer
you
is
have
a knight.
Eichel. You have Eichel, right? So it's like there's your first line center, or like who would you rather have, Suzuki or Eichel?
Yeah,
That's going to be the argument in my book. I understand the trade, what you're saying,
I
but
guess with the
Patch Ready,
money,
I'll
yeah,
be honest. When Patch Ready was healthy, he scored a lot of goals for him. He did like when he was healthy. And the one move that just I'll never understand was the Flurry one. I'll never understand it. Fan favorite. You go to a Vegas game in Vegas, it's Flurry jerseys everywhere. They love the guy. He would have retired there, and he's making like 3.5 million now, which is less than Leonard. I don't. It was something with your boy Pete DeBoer. I say your boy because he was a former Sharks coach. Something with him not liking Flurry and the way he played. I heard they didn't like how aggressive he was, and kind of sometimes he'll overslide and he'll come out of the crease. Mike McKenna told me that, who was one of Vegas's announcers, and he lives in St. Louis now, but. I don't know. I never understood the obsession with Leonard. Don't get me wrong, he came in, he played good, but like I'm gonna be honest, like Logan Thompson looked pretty good with them. They're a good hockey team.
yeah.
It's not like you need Vezina caliber goaltending. It's just but Fleury, I didn't understand that. That was the one move I'll never understand from a PR perspective and on ice perspective. I don't know.
I think that they just got caught trying to be too cute with the future and the present at the same time, and they just got kind of stuck. But yeah,
And who would know Fleury would win the Vezina when he was like 37?
unbelievable, man. Like, that was a wild experience. So we're both in agreement they're gonna make the
I
playoffs.
think they'll make the playoffs. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Do you think they'll win the division or division spot? Where do you think they'll finish in the Pacific?
I think they're gonna win the division. I'm gonna go hot take
Dude,
here.
I'm not gonna lie. Like I've watched enough Vegas cook my Sharks, dude. The COVID year, they literally went 8-0 against them. So like, dude, like
New coach with Bruce Cassidy too. I mean, you bring in let's be honest, dude. Like Pete DeBoer, he gets a lot out of him in
he's
the
great in the
beginning,
first year. He'll go.
Yeah,
He'll go to the
and then
cup in the first year, and then it's all
yeah,
downhill. It's all
and then
downhill.
I think Cassidy, like I think it's just a fresh start. I know when we get to Boston, we'll have to talk about that because obviously you had some guys come back out of nowhere. Krejci just he decided he want to take a year off and get away from Bruce, and then he came back. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I think Vegas. I'm gonna say they're gonna win the division. I mean. That's my hot take. Hate me on it all you want, but right now everyone likes to poop on him right now. But we'll see.
I think they are definitely in the right. It's all going to depend on how Logan Thompson plays, or if they go. I'm stunned that Reimer is. I don't know if it's because it's Vegas, but like I said, the Sharks have 3 signed goaltenders, and Reimer would be a perfect fit. Again, like the way that he's played, all you need is just good enough in Vegas. Your team is fine. You don't need someone to like Demko to carry. So I'd be stunned if they don't go out and get someone already. So moving on to LA, my least favorite team in the NHL, and they. I remember the beginning of last season. I said when it came to LA that they are either going to finish near the bottom, near where Seattle was in the Pacific Division, or all of their prospects would hit and they'd make the playoffs, wild card spot. Well, neither happened because their prospects did not hit, and they somehow still made the playoffs. That Philip Deneau signing was pretty incredible for them to go
Unreal.
with Anze Kopitar too. It's probably the best defensive center setup that it's in the league in terms of top two defensemen or top two centermen. But man, they have one of the best prospect pools. It's fallen quite a bit over the last year. But they have a lot of guys coming that'll be extremely exciting. Like Byfield didn't do much last year.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think one of them will get traded eventually too, because bringing in like Fiala, which is like their their
Yeah.
offseason move, and then they have Arvidsson, they have like all these guys, but like where's the room for guys like Kaliev, Kapari, Velarde, and then you got Turcotte that everyone forgets about still too. It's like I feel like that'll be a trade piece to bring in a defenseman eventually, because like Doughty's not getting any younger, and that's their weakness is their back end.
I agree. And Doughty, God, he definitely turned back the clock a little bit last
Oh
year.
yeah.
He was right up there with Carlson in terms of the worst contracts in the NHL. Last season he did a lot to at least he returned his value last year. However, he's got
Mhm.
5 more years at 11 million, and I think that the realistic expectation for Doughty is somewhere in the middle. Like last year won't happen again, but it won't be as bottomed out as everyone thinks. I agree. I think they don't have a lot of room, and I think the other thing is they overachieved it last year, and
Yes.
now there's pressure because like I
Mhm.
said, none of their prospects really hit. Byfield had 10 points in 40 games. Like he did not take over. And again, Gabe Velarde, he's been hurt a lot since he's been drafted. And Kapari and Kaliev were both exciting, but haven't done much. It's like they have on paper the best prospects, but now it's like now this is the season for them to like do something, and they might not. They
Right.
might, so we'll have to wait and see. But I'm curious to see Brant Clark. He was someone I was never impressed with when I watched him play the Ice Dogs. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
Just he did not seem to be a great skater. I don't know. Clearly still one of the best defensive prospects in the NHL. But we'll wait and see how he plays. But yeah, their back end is awfully suspect. I believe Sean Dursey still needs to be signed. He's been really, really good though.
And Mikey Anderson, who actually like he impressed me a lot in the playoffs. He was real solid against the Oilers. Yeah, their back end is like their weak link. I would feel like, and it's not like it's god awful by any means. It's just very inexperienced. I feel like you know what I mean. Like Doughty and Edler, like they re-signed Edler to that cheap deal, but that's about it in terms of experience.
I think
But yeah, I think they're gonna be. I don't know. What do you think? You think they make the playoffs? I
no, I
think
think
they're
they
gonna.
miss. I think they miss.
Yeah, I
Like
think they
last year
missed
they
too. I think they
overachieved.
do too.
I think that
I
I
do
think that
too.
Kopitar and Deneau make up for their defensive
And
liability.
Jonathan Quick having a good year. I know you don't love him, but like
One of the
he
most
had a pretty good
overrated.
year.
I know it's so frustrating. He is again, Sharks aside, he was the best playoff goaltender for a stretch of 4 years. I'll never
Yeah.
take that away from him. Statistically, he's been one of the worst goaltenders in the last 4 years. Prior to last year, the 4 seasons before, he was worse than Martin Jones over qualified goaltenders over a 4 year stretch. Put that in perspective, because how you view Martin Jones, that's what Jonathan Quick was. So, but he is still has the potential to be a good goaltender, and last year he proved it. I think Vegas is just going to be so much better than last year, and I could see Vancouver push LA, but
Yeah,
their
for
prospects
sure.
need to do something, and if they don't, I don't know. Next up, we'll do Edmonton. So, man, it's like the I mean, I guess it's slightly better than the LA Angels of hockey, but they finally go to the conference, the quietest conference final appearance, probably because they were out within a weekend. But
Right.
the Edmonton Oilers. Talk to me what you think about the Oilers this year.
Oh gosh, I don't know. Is it weird to say they're a lot of the same? I mean, I guess it, but I mean, I know they're bringing in the big thing is they're bringing in Jack Campbell. Okay, so is Jack Campbell gonna be anything close to what he does, pre All Star break, or is he gonna be what we saw later in the year. I think Jack Campbell is the real deal in terms of I think he's an NHL starting goalie for sure. Now the question is what is he going to give them? Is he going to give them, better than what Mike Smith did? I don't think he's going to let in the back breaking, deflating goals that Mike Smith was letting in. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think I definitely think they improved in net though for sure. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, they score plenty of goals, but I still think their defense stinks.
Yeah,
Like the defensemen.
their defense is. I think that the losing Oscar Clefbaum potentially for ever was a
Forever.
a gigantic issue. I think that had the Clefbaum stayed healthy and been able to play, their defense looks far better. Because I don't. Yeah, Jack Campbell, man, what. There is something about playing for the Leafs that I don't think any other fan base will understand maybe in all of sports. It's a lot like playing for the Dallas Cowboys in football. There's a reason why in the playoffs those teams just seem to not click, and Jack Campbell needed to make all of the saves at literally every single save, because the second that a goal goes in, that entire Toronto team would just absolutely sink. However, I don't think there's any sink in Connor McDavid.
No.
What he did in the playoffs, is Gretzky-esque. It was something that we just don't see ever in the last 25 years. I remember, dude, that LA series, it was during my subathon, and I watched every game at night, on stream we were watching, and had they not had Mike Smith in net, let's say they had Jack Campbell, I honestly think that they probably go 6 games with Colorado, and maybe that's not saying much, but I think that, maybe you can't fault Mike Smith in the Colorado series, but you can absolutely fault him in the LA series. He literally made them play 3 more games than they needed to. And
that all tacks on to your run.
That's what I'm saying.
When we played you guys in 2016, the Blues, we were dead by the time we got to you guys because we had to go deep with Chicago and Dallas. And it's it adds on, man. It's a lot of hits on the defensemen. It's a lot of, just wear and tear. And by the way, let's talk about this. Draisaitl did it on 1 foot. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't even healthy. I mean, he was a stud.
It's crazy. What Connor did in the LA series was what LeBron James does. There was which you don't see in hockey. You don't see the ability for one player to hop on the ice, get the puck, and just at will do whatever he wants. That hasn't been even Crosby at his highest level. He would go behind the net and force the play against Ottawa. I think that's one of my favorite sequences ever in hockey, where he just goes back and forth 9 different times because he just has the strongest core on the planet. And that's something that's a different skill set that Crosby has when you compare him to McDavid. McDavid would just go everywhere he wants with the puck. And I think that with Jack Campbell in net, I think he's good enough. And I don't think he has the pressure that you have. I can't imagine being a goaltender. Look what happens when you leave Toronto as a goaltender. Freddie Anderson just won the Jennings Trophy for the lowest goals against in the league. The pressure on a goaltender, you are run out of town as a player if in Toronto on any given night. You are either an MVP Hall of Famer or you are a cast-off. They don't want you anymore. And it's game by game. And that's just got to be brutal to think about, because you got to realize these guys go to work and they have to go home, and it's ugh, you know what I mean? And a goaltender, you've been a goalie your whole life. When you let in a goal, your next shot, you're oh my God, dude, I can't let in another. I don't know how guys could stand being a goaltender in Toronto.
You have to have a extremely strong mental game. That's why I always said, if Benner didn't play in St. Louis and he's from Toronto, he'd be the perfect goalie in Toronto because nothing phases Benner. Yeah, and he's from there.
Yeah.
He's whatever. All right, I'll go hang out with Drake or something. He doesn't care. You know what I mean? I don't know. But yeah, I agree. I think Jack's going to do good there. You still have a lot of pressure just in Canadian market in general, but I think he knows what he's getting into because he's dealt with the toughest market you could probably deal with, other than I guess that in Montreal probably. So it's I think, like I said, I think they'll be second or third in the division.
I honestly, okay, I see where you're going. Then I know what we think of the next one. Then I think Edmonton. If Vegas does not win the division, I think Edmonton does. I think.
Yeah, right.
As long as Jack Campbell is not an AHL goaltender, but it can't be worse than Mike Smith.
No.
There's probably a lot of Oilers fans that are like, oh, he's not like, you know what I mean? Smith like was fine. It's like, bro, I don't know if I mean, I was Martin Jones was the Shark. So like, I know what it's like to have a bad goal let up and watch your team just be like, dude, McDavid was literally like, we just need a save. Like in his pressers was like, you score 4, you need to win. Like that without saying it. Like he was like, bro, make a save. Like that's it. And
Yep.
I think Jack Campbell does that. So I think that if Vegas does not win the division, I think Edmonton does. Which leads us
For
to
sure.
our last team of the Pacific Division, the Calgary Flames. And I think that you really like Calgary, who had, man, this has got to be one of the craziest off seasons in the history of the NHL.
Coolest offseason ever,
Yeah,
too.
because
That's a word.
they were absolutely like firing squad was lined up to just put Calgary out to
Unbelievable.
pasture, and what they were able to do is nothing short of a miracle, because they had no leverage. They lost Goudreau, and they lost Goudreau at the final minute, meaning that they thought they had him, and Goudreau was like, "Nope, I don't want to be in Calgary. I'd rather be closer to home." And went to Columbus, which stunned everyone. I remember I was at baseball, and I remember just checking in between innings, and I'm like, dude, he's a Blue Jacket. What in the world?
Dude, I heard about it that morning, and they were like, Columbus. I'm like, no way. Why would he go to Columbus? And then, like, I remember I kept texting Chris Johnson, and I'm like, where do you think he's really going? And he kept sending me the stupid CBJ cannon going off, the gift. And I'm like, there's no way. And then, like, an hour later, he's in Columbus, and I'm like, what in the world? And then, like, I don't know, you kind of, like, listen to it as time's gone on, and it makes a lot of sense from, like, what he said. Everything that he has said, and just, one of the guys I know, he used to play with him in high school, like, and he knows him personally, like, everything kind of adds together now. Now it makes a ton more sense. I think they made out about as good as you could, because, yes, Kadri and Huberdeau, they brought them in. They're obviously older than Tkachuk, but Gaudreau and Tkachuk were never staying there.
Yeah.
So, yes, you're going to pay a little bit more for those two in Huberdeau and Kadri. They're older. You're going to have to overpay to keep them long term. But in terms of longevity, I mean, I think they have a better team than they had last year.
That's the thing. Like, that's the thing.
I really do.
They lost 2/3 of the best line in hockey last year, which is, like, astounding. And somehow, Mackenzie Weegar is one of the best defensemen in the NHL.
And everyone forgets about that in the deal.
Yeah,
like, they literally do.
Yeah, and, getting Huberdeau, again, older, you're right. I think that this makes the window much shorter, but it is definitely open. And Markstrom has been one of the best goaltenders since coming to Calgary. The Monahan deal, it's crazy that if you had said like 2 years ago that Goudreau, Monahan, and Tkachuk were all gone and Calgary's still a very, very good hockey team, like there's no other team that's done that. Like no other team that's done that. That's had to deal with it. And somehow, like their decor is nasty. So adding Weegar this next year, it's going to get awfully tough probably in like 2 to 3 years.
But Lucci's just coming off the books this year.
True.
And
true.
2 years, Backlund's off the books. I mean, so it's like they kind of have it plotted. Like, I mean, they could make a charge at somebody in a few years too. I mean, like the way their money, they don't really have like a guy on the back end that's making $7+ million. You know what I mean? And like, we'll see what Weegar gets. I think he'll get like 6 probably, if I had to guess. That's what I'm just gonna ballpark it, like 6 million if he has another good year. But yeah, like in Elias Lindholm, like what a steal at 4.8 million. That guy's a stud.
That's nuts, man. Yeah, absolutely. Dude, that Elias Lindholm and Hannafin trade, like
Adam Fox too, remember?
Bro, like that. Yeah, like
another American that was not playing in Calgary.
No, yeah, and that's something that's got to be
or
said.
Carolina too. Yeah. Like, let's be honest.
That's another thing, especially with like the landscape of I don't want to talk politics, but like. Yeah. The way that COVID is handled in Canada is starting to impact like athletes. Like you're gonna see.
I think there was something to it. I think there was with Gaudreau because you're gonna have a kid for the first time and you don't know I don't know your guys' stuff up there, but I mean there's if they have another lockdown or something, like who knows like we don't know what's gonna happen in the winter. And like if you have your first kid and it's like your parents can't even come visit you because like they close down this or whatever, it's like I get it. Like and you don't want to. Everyone's got to deal with it differently.
It's curious to see specifically Americans in Canadian markets. And I think that next year we're going to get to see it.
You came down here during COVID at some cities, and it was like the
Yeah.
Wild West. Like nothing ever happened. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And then some cities you couldn't even leave your house. So it's like,
absolutely. I think that the drastic differences, were pretty crazy. And I think that a lot of people forget that like athletes are like just people. Like after the game is done, they literally just have to
yeah,
go be humans. And
right.
you know,
They got to go to the grocery store too. They got to go to
I mean, again, just like bring up the Sharks again. Like there was a time where Doug Wilson literally had to come out and say, "We want people that want to win with the Sharks, not that want to live here." And I've been to Calgary. I think it's a really fun city. Just like Winnipeg, I don't think there's a lot of guys in the NHL that say, "I want to go live in Winnipeg and Calgary and Edmonton." As opposed to some of the other cities. And
I know the Swedes like it there because it's the most comparable kind of thing to Sweden.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that,
exactly.
that
Yeah.
in Vancouver, like the weather with Banff and all that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
so that's,
It's
they got a little
beautiful
Swedish
up
core up
there.
there. It
But
is really nice. Like, yeah, there's a lot of places that are cool.
But man, like yeah, like it's just it seems like it's just awfully tough. And again, Americans in man, talk to me real quick. How did Kachuk not? How was he not a St. Louis? You were literally skating with him.
I know, and I skated with him the week after he came back from Florida too. He I've always heard this. The Kachucks, they are businessmen, and their dads taught them best. And Brady and Matthew, like they're not gonna get like all the Blues fans. Oh, he's gonna come back here and all this stuff. Like, okay, first off, we never give out no movement clauses. Why would he come back here? Like, we don't like. There's no guarantee of a no movement clause, and he's gonna want that. And he wanted, dude. His deal in Florida was unbelievable. He has like 68 million in like signing bonus money.
Yeah,
like,
it's like all up front too. Like it's nuts.
yeah, like why would, and he gets to live on the beach. He could come back here in St. Louis when he's 33, 34 years old and then, retire or play out the rest of his, career here. And that way he can check off the list. I played in St. Louis. Like, but for right now, like, I don't blame him. Like, I mean, I love the Blues, but it's like, that was a great deal for him in Florida. I think Florida, that was another good move for Florida. Like, I think both teams did good.
It's crazy that is a good trade for both teams, given the sense that it was like two of their best
Huberdeau
players.
wasn't going back to Florida. Probably they wouldn't have been able to clear money because of Bobrovsky's full contract. It's like,
dude,
that literally screwed them from signing Weegar and Huberdeau because they would have had to do like serious surgery to make it all work.
It's what's tough is that they went out and got Knight too that same year. It's like,
yeah.
God, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about Florida when we do the Atlantic Division. But what do we think? What do you think of Calgary this year, and where do you think they'll finish?
Second or third. I don't know which spot. I think it'll be the Battle of Alberta in the standings. It'll be them two kind of going back. And I mean, like you said, I mean, who knows? It's going to take a while. It's a lot of new guys gelling together. So
which very rarely works in hockey, by the way. I mean, we'll talk about Ottawa in a little bit because I think Ottawa is like the new hotness. But it very rarely did when like you get that many new guys in hockey does it work out. Yeah, I think I think that Calgary is not as good as Edmonton this year. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like I think that I keep forgetting the Weegar thing. Like their defense is so much better than Edmonton's.
Yeah, it really is.
Man, if Leonard was Vegas' starting goaltender, I don't think this would be a question.
Yeah.
No, I still think Vegas wins the division. I think Calgary and Edmonton finish 2 and 3. And then I think Vancouver is the one that potentially I don't think 4 teams make it out of the Pacific this year, but I think that Vancouver would be the one that can kind of sneak in. But yeah, guys, let us know in the comment section. Bro, that was fun. That was a fun hour talking actual hockey.
When we get me and you talking hockey, we could go 5 hours. We do this in Discord every day for anybody that doesn't know. And we just sit here and we talk about business, talk about sports. It's just, and then it's like, oh, it's already noon. All right, time to go eat lunch. I gotta go stream. It's every day. So. Oh, this was fun. We'll do it again for sure.
Absolutely. So, guys, yeah, the plan is we're gonna test this out, see how you guys enjoy it. We're gonna do a division preview for every division. So this isn't a one-off with my man Padre. Well, Kesso is away. Kesso's gonna hop on and talk the real hockey with us too, but obviously he's got a lot to deal with right now with the birth of his daughter. So, yeah, let us know in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube. Let us know down below what you thought and your thoughts on our takes. Were we completely wrong or were we absolutely right? I think that we're right now. All right. But yeah, guys, it's been cool, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.